Alrighty, now what we're going to talk about is the new device that we just developed called the Portable Neck Fulcrum exercise. The neck fulcrum protocol on the fulcrums, cervical or neck and lumbar lower back, are described and shown on our website. But because of inconvenience, many people will not take the time that's necessary to get on the floor and do the fulcrum exercises frequently enough and effectively enough. And in our research, about 60% or greater of the human population have lost the normal curve in the neck, and many of them are actually going into reverse curve or kyphosis in the cervical spine. Even more complicated, some of them I can't take this dry spine and show it, but I'll use this flexible rod to do so. Normal curve with the person facing to this side here would be like this. When we draw tangent lines and tangent lines to the top and bottom of that arc, should be about 38 to 42 degrees. And so then what we see in our culture is configurations that are actually gone into a double curve, even backward in this type of configuration with a double curve. Extraordinarily commonly we'll see no curve and a forward head posture like this. And when we go into hyperflexion and hyperextension stress studies, forcing the neck to go through ranges of motion, we very commonly see this, where the upper part of the spine has lost its total capacity to go into forward bending and is in this configuration. And with the upper thoracic spine and a tremendous amount of tension here at the lower neck and upper shoulder girdle, and with forward head posture. It is so prevalent in our culture. Many people refer to it from text neck and also from working on computers, because we all know that when we start working on a computer, we sit up down, sit up nice and tall, and we start computing, and then we start computing more and longer and longer and longer, and we do this for hours. And so then all the other things that we do in our daily activities continue to compromise our ability to stay upright with gravity, and that's what causes the such degree of restriction, compromised motion, static loads, which cause the degenerative process. So what we want to do is to retain our ability to recover and retain our upright posture in gravity and to reestablish the normal curve in the spine. Reason why it's so important is that in the literature it speaks to the reciprocal relationship of the three primary curves in the spine. Forward curve in the neck, backward curve in the middle back, forward curve in the lower back. That's what the human spinal system is supposed to do. And they are intimately related to one another. Now, because we see all these losses in the curves in the human experience on x-rays, we must understand some basic fundamental principles of physics and mathematics and geometry. When we lose the curve in the spine, we do not lose the curve on a linear axis like this or planar motion, because that would require that we move up against gravity in the path of greatest resistance to lose function. That's really not what happens. Dr. Pettibon, my mentor, is really the one who established this quite thoroughly with review of the literature and innovative thinking, that the curves in the spine move around arcs of motion. This has been very, very, very well established now. So when you lose the curve in the neck, you don't do this, you actually do this. And so when it looks straight from the side view, that's because the curve has gone somewhere. With these double curves, this becomes extraordinarily complicated and puts huge amount of compromise to the neural structures, not only the nerve roots, but the spinal cord itself has to be torqued and twisted in taking the ligamentous coverings of the spinal cord, the meninges, and creating a huge torquing effect on the spinal cord. The neurological consequences of this are so great that it's almost immeasurable. So what we're going to do, we see other people in our culture who have tried to develop tools to reestablish the curves. Many of them have used straps like this here, to try to reestablish the curves in the spine, like this. Many of them have used more like bungee cords and stuff like that to try to do it as well, like this. Many of people have thought about doing extension motion, bending it very far backward, but I think you can see what the problem is. The focus of the force produced by the cord is too isolated. The arc actually is a longer, more smooth arc and graceful, if you will, so that the load must be designed to transfer through as much of the arc as possible, tending to have its greatest effect on the apex or the intersection of the vectors. Then once we start to pull the curve back into its ideal position, what will happen is it'll move around arcs of motion from this side of deviation or that side of deviation back to a central position by running it not only with the force pulling it in, but then running the spine through ranges of motion with side bending, turning, and what have you, to continue to train all of the ligaments and muscles to restore and retain and function within the context of its ideal design, ideal curve and central orientation in the front to back plane. And so then, because the contour, this is a plastic spine, but cast, if you will, to the accurate shape and size of a human spinal system, so that we can see what I have done is I've developed this greater diameter tubular material, and so you can see that it much more gracefully contours the normal arc. And what we've done is we've put bungee cords in it with these special clips that can be added or taken away. So if a person is very, very athletic, just put 2 more bungee cords. If the person is debilitated, elderly, disconnect and only use one of the bungee cords to make it less difficult for the individual doing the exercises. And for those people who have lost a lot of function, they may have to start with very, very smaller tension on the bands. The handle, others have made handles that are more easily bent, if you will. They contour the hand. They're actually more difficult. You need to have a relatively stable, solid grip. So these handles that we have found are really very, very ideal to do this exercise. And so we take the tube and we put it on the back of the neck, and we go in and grab the handlebars. Again, in our rehabilitative process, we always focus on putting the tongue on the frenulum to make sure that when we retrain ideal form and function, that we keep consideration of the relationship of the TMJ muscles to the order of the neck muscles and the movement of the head and neck. So we're going to be again in the upright posture. We're going to take the handlebars and we're going to stretch them out. For those who are comfortable enough, we'll go and extend the elbows